If you're watching this video, that means I've hit 2,000 subscribers. So for that, thanks. And to celebrate, I want to tell you all the story of my favorite commander deck I've ever built. So let's go. In 2021, I assembled my favorite commander deck I've ever played. It's my 3-color Omnath Lands deck. I love it so much that I'm actually trying to foil it out in paper. Shout out to MH3 for making the ally color fetches more accessible. Now, the reason I love the deck isn't for anything super special. It's strong, yeah, but not top tier by any means. It wasn't this stepping stone of deck building for me either. It's a non-deterministic combo deck, meaning on the turns I win, I'm mostly playing solitaire. I'll get into it later, but that also wasn't really foreign to me at the time. But it's my favorite because I made it on accident, and at the same time, made something completely original. That is what was new for me. So how the hell did I make an entire deck because of a mistake? Well, it all started with me reading a card wrong and getting mad. That card was the 4-color Omnath printed in Zendikar Rising. See, 4-color Omnath's ability grants you stuff for the first, second, and third time the ability is resolved. When I first read it, I thought two wrong things. First, I didn't realize that you only got the one ability for each trigger. I thought on the second trigger you got the life and the mana, and on the third trigger you get all three. I also didn't realize that you didn't get anything beyond the third trigger. I thought it just kept going, and for your 4th and 5th lands, etc., you got to gain 4, add 4 mana, and dome your opponents for 4 every time you play a land. So naturally, knowing this, I thought this card was fucking sick. I had this awesome Landstorm idea in my head, where you cast a bunch of spells like Skyshroud Claim and Explosive Vegetation and storm off using ramp spells. And the best part was even if someone stops you mid-combo, you'll still be ramped like crazy so you can rebuild relatively quickly. Eventually, I read the card again and realized what a critical error I'd made, and sat in the fetal position for a few hours. Like, come on, my bad for thinking power creep had gotten out of control. Oh wait. Anyway, in the following weeks after my deck idea was shot down, I couldn't shake the idea of storming off using land ramp spells. One aspect of the broken 4-color Omnath deck that I didn't have figured out was how I could get more gas while I was popping off. See, at the time, I had like 3 storm-based decks in Commander, and I had played Gift Storm in Modern, back when that was a thing. So I knew the main things you needed to storm off were mana and cards to keep the machine humming. The mana part was easy. I'm literally using ramp spells to storm off. But the constant stream of cards, that was tougher. Synergistically, it doesn't make much sense to play the typical cantrips like Ponder, Serum Visions, or Preordain, since they'd be really disjointed along with the ramp spells that take the place of the rituals. Also, I had just done that before. But then I remembered something from when I was looking at the EDH page for the 4-color Omnath. What I was remembering was actually 4-color Omnath before he got plastic surgery. And by that, I mean the 3-color Omnath. See, the 3-color Omnath was printed in M20, which is when they were really trying to push Elemental Tribal. So this Omnath has a couple lines of text that care about elementals, like the damage effect and even the +1/+1 counter effect. But on his second line of text, there's a little something extra that caught my eye. Whenever you play a land, if you have 8 or more lands, draw a card. And when I saw that, I thought, holy shit. Everything fell into place. Play lands, draw cards, draw more lands, play more lands, draw more cards. It was perfect. There's even some redundant pieces like Tadiova and AC that I could play. And that's when the creative juices started to flow again. But again, I ran into a problem. Pretty much all the cheap ramp spells that put lands directly into play, put lands into play tapped. This meant that even when I was quote-unquote comboing off, it'd be really unlikely for me to be able to kill the table in one turn. And with all the lands I just ramped out, I'd be a huge target after I passed the turn to my opponents. Wait, what if I never passed the turn to my opponents? And this is when the deck idea went from good to great. It all made sense. I'd ramp like crazy, draw a ton of cards, and pass the turn to myself with an extra turn spell. And meanwhile, Omnath gets huge, so I can just kill people with commander damage or Chandra's Ignition. All the pieces had finally been put into place, so I proxied out a first draft and took it to a commander night with some friends. And the best part is, in the first game I played with it, it totally crushed. Now, I don't want to brag or anything, but this isn't the first time I built a deck and it won the first game I played with it. Usually that's not too uncommon, since people who don't know what decks do won't be able to threat assess as well. But the reason this was so special to me is because I came up with this idea all by myself. See, at this point, here's the list of decks I owned. Yidra Storm, which I came up with from a Commander Clash video, Brago Blinking/Control, Joyra Cheerios, Chulane Creature Storm, and a Zada combo deck. But what do these decks all have in common? Well, at the time, Every single one of these commanders was the most popular general in its colors except for Zada. And more so, none of these deck concepts were original at all. I mean, take one look at Joyra and tell me it wasn't made specifically to storm off. But Omnath, that one was different. Sure, ramping isn't breaking any new ground, but an Omnath extra turn deck was never a thing. The only popular deck I could think of that used extra turns were something involving Edric or Narset. It was the first time I'd put something together almost completely on my own that rocked. Hell, to this day, there are only 3 Omnath extra turn decks that EDHREC recognizes, and they were all made after mine. I was the pioneer of this weird, niche deck, and no one could ever take that away from me. Now that it's been a few years since I've made the deck, it still stands as one of my favorites that I own. I honestly think Balin has either surpassed it or is going to very soon. Omnath tends to play out like a solitaire game once I start going off, which makes for less fun gameplay for the table than Balin does on average. But this deck will always hold a special place in my heart as my first real masterpiece, and as my special creation for as long as I live. So, yeah, that's the video. There's no real thesis statement or anything. Thank you to those of you who've subscribed, and if you aren't yet, please consider. I'd also love to hear the stories behind your favorite decks in the comments below. And before anyone says it, I know I said I'd post this once I hit 2K in another video on what would be today, but I realized I probably bit off more than I could chew because that'd be 3 videos in a week, and I have an exam on the day this is posting, and I'm just going to stick to the weekly stuff if I can.